Hello, welcome to Creative Works Homemade Art. Today I'm going to be sharing 3 ideas for ways to incorporate nature and art journaling into a trip to the zoo this summer. Karen Andriol said in the Charlotte Mason Companion, if we give our children regular opportunities to get in touch with God's creation, a habit is formed that will be a source of delight throughout their lives. The ideas I'm sharing are just that. They're just ideas. They're not something to add to our already very long to-do list. If one of the ideas strikes you as something that would bring delight to you and your family's life, then maybe give it a consider. The first idea is very simple. On the next zoo trip, bring a small sketchbook and a pencil or a drawing pen for each of the participants, yourself included. Moms doing this alongside and dads with their children builds absolutely unforgettable memories and lots of fun and probably some laughter. As you're walking through the zoo, when something jumps out to one of you, pause. Maybe even sit down for a few minutes and just observe, letting your students and yourself make some sketches or some notes about what they're observing. The second idea is to possibly use the sketchbooks as I mentioned before, or maybe not, and just go to the zoo. Before you arrive, ask your children to try to keep in mind what their top 3 favorite animals that they see that day, so that you can do an activity with them later. It wouldn't even have to be animals. It also could be a scene, a beautiful waterfall, a zoo program, just their top 3 favorite things, the highlights of the trip. And then when you get home, maybe in the evening or on a rainy afternoon, go back to those ideas and create a nature journal spread about those 3 favorite highlights from the zoo. Here in a few minutes, I'll be showing you an example that I did after my last solo zoo trip. The video that's playing right now goes along with the third idea, which is to choose one species and do a deep dive. You can tell that, well, maybe you can't tell. I did the painting of this at home. The drawing I did on location, sitting and watching the clouded leopards, but the painting came later. Now I'm going to show you how I laid out my nature journal page for the top 3 highlights from my solo zoo trip here a few weeks ago. You'll see that I'm tracing around some scrapbook paper shapes. That is a whole nother project, but I have cut out for myself from some pretty scrapbook paper different sized boxes and circles that I can use as templates for laying out, kind of putting cells on my nature journal pages that give my nature journal pages a bit of organization. It helps me stay on track and even helps me come up with some composition ideas, because you can move those boxes around before you start to trace around in them. You can see here, I'm just using a pad of sticky notes because I could not find my square scrapbook template at the moment of recording the video. I'm using a black fine liner for outlining all these cells on the nature journal page. And what I chose for this layout was a title and data section along with a box for each of my top 3 memories from that zoo trip. When you're creating a nature journal page, I always encourage students to record some basic data on their journal entry. Basic data would include things like certainly the location, the date of the observations made, what the weather was like, who you were with, and anything else that comes to mind. It's just fun to look back years later and be able to be like, oh yes, that's right. It was in July. I was with my family and this is where we were. You'll see now that I switched from using a fine liner to using some Tombow markers. For this spread, I just chose 3 Tombows in colors that that seemed to go along with the zoo in general. And I created a title, and you'll see here that I'm adding in the details like I had mentioned, including a little weather icon, which I think is kind of fun to draw rather than to just write it, but you could just write it as well. Now that I have my title box filled in, I'm looking back at some of the photos that I took on the zoo trip to work from for the drawings. Now, these drawings do not have to be lifelike recreations of the animal. They can be just little stick figures, they can be cartoon-like sketches, or if you have a student who wants to, then certainly they can go into lots of detail and maybe draw and get out the watercolors or markers and color it in. The nature journals can be whatever the owner wants them to be. They are a place to record your memories, to record your observations, and then all sorts of other wonderful things are happening at the same time that the artist is doing all this. But the focus should be on having fun and recording some happy memories. So my first box, I do a sketch of one of the clouded leopards. I haven't gotten around to this yet, but I own a field guide of that includes the big cats of the world. And at some point, I want to look up and read about the clouded leopard, and then I will probably go back and add in some of the interesting facts onto this page. one of the fun pieces of information that I learned about the clouded leopards at our zoo was that the female's name is Rory. So I add that into the box. It was extra special and memorable because my granddaughter's name is Rory. So the next box on my on my highlights list, I am going to do a sketch of one of the Sumatran tigers. And I wasn't purposely trying to only pay attention to the cats on this trip. However, when I walked past the Sumatran tiger exhibit, there was a couple of families who were craning their necks to look back in the corner of the exhibit, and they were kind of laughing and saying that the tiger was laying just like their house cat lays at home when he's taking a good nap. So after those families moved on, I peeked around, and sure enough, that great big tiger was laying on his back, all 4 feet up in the air, just having a wonderful, wonderful nap. So that I did take a photo. It's kind of a blurry photo because the glass was a bit steamy. But I got enough of an image that I could make my little cartoon tiger here laying on his back and having a good old cat nap. For my last highlight from the zoo trip, I chose to add a sketch of the bat-eared fox. So what was special about the bat-eared fox family this time? I've always thought they were very, very cute little creatures. They're in the African part of our zoo. But a couple of months ago, they had a litter. Is that right? A litter of kits. So they have 5 kits. And on exhibit was mom and dad and all 5 kits. Now, by this time, it was close to the end of my zoo trip, and it was getting pretty warm out, and they were all zonked out. So you actually, earlier in the video, saw some photographs that I took of the bat-eared foxes. And it was the mama fox that was laying out asleep in the sun, and then the daddy and all 5 of the kits were inside the log behind her. But that was a wonderful thing to get to see. I did get to see one of the kits had he was asleep, but his head was sticking out at the other end, and I got a pretty good picture of his cute little face. Okay, well, that's all that I have for today. I hope that through watching or listening to this video that you might get inspired to, one, get out with your family and visit a zoo or a local animal park, and two, to think maybe outside of the box in ways that you can extend the fun by adding in some art journaling or nature journaling. If you have any other ideas or suggestions that you could share with anyone else who might happen on this video, please leave them in the comments below, because I'm sure that this is just not even scratching the surface of ideas of what you could do homeschool-wise, either nature journaling, art journaling, academically, that you could incorporate into a zoo trip. I hope you all continue to have a lovely summer, and I'll see you in the next video.